So at the end of this class, you should be able to implement role-based authentication and authorization in Spring Boot. So this is what I mean. So if I go to this place, you see that we have a page to manage user details. And for this particular user, which is me, we have currently assigned role is a user role. And we have the button to unassign this role. We also have roles. I'm going to just increase the font. We also have roles. User is not currently assigned. And for this list of roles here, we have opportunity the button to actually assign the user this role. So these are a kind of a role management page for this particular user. Of course, we also need another page which actually provides a list of roles. You can actually create as many roles as you want, maybe vehicle admin, HR admin, user admin. So the name of the role is not limited to what we have here. We have only these three, but you can actually create more and also give an explanation of what this role is all about. So this is what we are going to be doing in this class. And this is the list of what we are going to be covering. So we set up the security packages. Now, this role-based authentication built on top of Spring Security. So you should have had Spring Security implemented first, which provides you a list of users. And in this class, we are going to be talking about role-based authentication, where we are going to actually create roles and restrict access to pages based on roles. So we have six items: set up the security packages, create the role class, modify the user model to include roles, so that you can have user.getRoles, create the role repository and service, write the AssignRole and UnassignRole methods, write the GetUserRoles and GetUserNotRoles methods. And then we are going to continue in the next part. All right, so we have these two parts. So we have the second part here. And then the second part, we are going to create the role controller user edit page. User edit page is just what I showed you right here. And we are going to write the controller method to show the user edit page, write the assign and unassign role controller, and we are going to test it out. And actually, give me 1 second, let me just refresh this page. And I think something is missing here. Okay, we're also going to restrict access to pages based on user roles. Yeah. So let's go ahead to just get started right now. So this is where we are currently. If you are joining for the first time, this is FleetMS version 1. I actually have to do this in response to a user's question because I actually have suspended working on FleetMS version 1. But I'm just doing this to respond to a user's question who actually have got all the way to part 47 and just want to implement this. He doesn't want to actually start afresh from version 2. So that's why I'm doing this right now. And if you are joining me for the first time, please subscribe to my channel. If you have any challenges, please let me know in the comment box below this video, because this is what I normally do. I help users or programmers build systems from the scratch. All right, so let's follow the steps. I also have made a step-by-step right here in my website. So I'm going to kind of put the IntelliJ window side by side with the web page that contains So let's start from step 1. Okay. All right. So the first thing we want to do is to set up the packages. So I'm going to go to this is where we have FleetMS. Okay. So I'm going to go to the main package or the base package and create new package. I'm going to call this package security. That's the package that's going to hold everything, all the files about user authentication, role-based authentication. So I'm going to create a package. I'm going to call it security. And inside this package, I'm going to create 3 more packages, and one of them is going to be services controller and services, models, controllers, and repositories. All right, so this is where we are going to be placing everything we need. So the next thing I want to do is to create the role class. So we want the class to be able to add, update, edit, and delete roles. So I'm going to create it right inside the models package. So this is just a normal module that has a entity annotation. So I'm going to call it role, okay? So let's forget about this. So I'm going to copy and paste because I don't want to waste your time. So this is a normal class with two fields, role description and details. Okay, with two fields, description and details. Let me import all of this. And just for you to take note of, auditable is the auditable class. You can actually remove it if you don't want it, but I've already explained, made a class on auditable as part of this series. So if you don't have it already, you can remove it, because if you don't have it and you want to continue running it with auditable, then you are going to have error. So if you don't implement auditable before now, then you can actually just remove this extent and it's all fine. Alright, so you have a review of auditable. You can find it here. You can also find a video and all the code snippets you need to learn about auditables. And the next thing we want to do is to modify the user class so that it will include roles. We want to have the user class will contain the list of roles. So we can actually say user.getRoles to return a list of roles belonging to that particular user. So we want to do that in the user class. So I'm going to go to the existing user class, which we already created. So now we want to have this class contain roles or user roles, but I'll actually like to call it just roles. So it's going to be a set of roles. Roles is equal to new hash set, and with the semicolon here, and do the imports. Okay, so it's a basic attribute. Now, the relationship between the user and the role is many to many, because a user can have many roles. A user can be an admin and also a super admin at the same time, and also a fleet admin or a HR admin. So a user can have many roles, and also a role can be assigned to many users. For instance, an admin a user ABC can be admin at the same time. So the role admin can belong to more than one user, while one user can also have many roles. So we have many to many. And the many to many relationship is somehow, I'm going to make a video on it to explain it clearly, because it's not as clear as one to many or many to one. But just let me try to explain it here as much as I can, as simply as I can. So the first thing we want to determine is the join table. Now, if you are doing a many to many between two different entities, we need a join table in between. This join table, you don't have to create it. The system or Hibernate ORM is going to create it for you. So in this case, we're going to just specify the name of the join table. The default name of the join table is the name of table, the first entity, underscore the name of the second entity. Okay, so let's do it. I'll do the cascade here. Cascade is equal to cascade type.all, and we also have to do a fetch. So this fetch is also very important, because we want to fetch everything before you allow the user to authenticate. You want to know the list of roles he have. So you don't want to fetch it lazily one by one. You want to see all the roles so that you know whether to allow him in or not. So let's talk about the join table. So once you specify the join table here, Hibernate is going to now take over from there. So the join table here, the name of the join table is going to be user underscore role, and we also specify the join columns. Now I don't want to copy and paste, because I usually recommend you actually type it out yourself. The more you type, the clearer it becomes to you. So the join table, you need to specify the join column and the inverse join column. So in this particular entity, the user entity, we specify the join column, and the inverse join column is a column on the other entity. Okay. So in this case, the join column here is equal to actually join columns is equal to join column name is equal to user underscore ID, and we specify the inverse join columns to be join column name is equal to role ID. All right, so what we have here now is we have a list of roles. So the getter and setter is already out right there from Lombok once you have this data annotation. So we can actually, if we have a user, we can just say user.getRoles and we get the list of roles for this user. So just make sure you don't type anything wrongly. So make sure you get the spellings correctly. Okay. So cascade type, I've talked about it in a different video. So it talks about what happens when you delete a child object, what happens, a parent object, what happens to the child object. So when you delete, you want to delete a parent, you want all the childs are also going to be deleted as well. Operation performed on the parents is going to cascade down to the children. This is not the clearest explanation, but that is what the cascade concept is all about. So we now want to create the role service and the role repository. So we want to have the repository and service to be able to do insert, update, delete, and select for roles. So I'm going to go to everything should be inside the security. So inside the security, I'm going to create the role repository. So it's going to be role repository. And it's going to be an interface. Yeah, so I'm just going to take this thing out, cancel, and I'm going to annotate it with the @repository annotation. Okay, so it's going to extend JPA repository, and for the particular class, it's going to be role, and the primary key type should be integer. And I'm going to import here. Right. Okay, so this is a basic repository we have been always creating before now. And then we also create the role service. So I'm going to go to my service package and create a new class. I'm going to call it role service. And here I'm going to give it service annotation. Okay, so first, this I showed you before is not in this application. So this is in a different application. So we are doing this from the scratch. Take note of that. Okay, so what do we have here? Yeah, so let's go copy a service from somewhere and then modify. So I'm going to kind of go to client service. I'm going to copy the client service. That's what I normally do. If you have existing code, just copy and paste and modify. So I'm going to copy it onto the role service and change the client to service. So I'm going to just say file, edit, find, and replace. So I'm going to, in this file, replace all the clients to role. Okay, so we have our service created now. So we have a service to add, edit, select, and update role. So what next? Write the find all, find by, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we've done that. So we've done the role service and role repository. Now I want to write a function to assign a role to a user and also to unassign a role to a user. And we're going to write these two functions in the role service. Now this is very, very important. I'm going to explain to you how it works. So the function to assign a role to a user is going to be a void function. So it's going to take the user ID and the role ID and simply assign it. And it's so interesting how it works. So I'm not going to copy and paste it. I'm going to type it out so that I can explain it to you. So assign user role is going to take an integer first parameter to be user ID and the second parameter to be a role ID, and it's going to assign this role to a user. All right, so what's going to happen? First, we need the user repository here because we are going to find the user, get the set of the roles of the user by using GetUserRoles, then add the role to the set of roles of the user, and use this updated set of roles to update the user roles using set roles, and then we are going to save back the user to the repository. So this is how you actually assign a user to a role. So let's do it so that you see how it works. So I need user repository here, user repository here, user repository. Okay. So let's take the steps I mentioned. So the first thing we want to do is to find the user. So it's going to be user is equal to user repository that's find by ID and user ID. Okay, so this is going to be or else null. So if it doesn't find it, it's going to return a null or else null. We are also going to do the same thing for roles. I'm going to find this role as well. And this time this role repository dot find by ID is going to be role ID dot or else null. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to get the user role. So I'm going to say set of role. We'll call it UserRoles is equal to user.getRoles. And now just import here. And now I'm going to say UserRoles. Actually, UserRoles, because there are more than one. Dot set dot add, and I'm going to specify the role we received. We can add it. And now we are going to set back the user role, the user roles. So I'm going to say user.setRoles, user roles. And then finally, I'm going to say user repository save user, because the role has been updated now, so we just want to save it. Yeah, so the next one, which is unassign, is quite interesting. So it's going to be public void on assign user role, and the same thing is specify, sorry, not you, integer user ID and integer role ID. Okay, so so this is also very interesting. So what do? We want to also get the user roles and remove the user roles, remove one role from there and update back the user. So I'm going to say user is equal to, user repository dot find by ID, user ID dot else null. So find this user and say user, let me just do it the long way. So set of role, user roles is equal to, now the one on my website is also correct, but I just want to do it in a clearer way, is equal to user.getRoles. Okay, so once we get the role, we want to remove the role that's having the ID that we remove. So we got from this function. So we don't actually need to do find role, okay, because we are removing by ID. So how does it work? So I'm going to say user roles dot remove if x such that so what happened now, this is a predicate based function. So remove if, so it's gonna remove from the list based on certain criteria. So wherever the ID of the role in the list matches the ID you specify here, based on this condition, it's going to remove it. So that's why we have the remove if. And finally, I'm going to save back the user. User repository that save user. Okay, perfect. So we have this. The next thing we want to do now is get user roles and get user not roles. Get user roles is very easy, so let's quickly do it. Because in this case, if you are given a user, you want to get his roles. So it's going to be public a set of role get user roles user. So you're given a user, you want to get his roles. So what are you going to return? Return user.getRoles. That's all. Now let's go to the next one, public set of roles as well, and it's going to be get user not roles. Now what is get user not roles? Get user not roles is a set of roles that the user does not have. Because if you want to manage a user roles, you want to have a set of user roles that you can assign the user. And this is a set of roles that are not assigned to the user. That's a set of roles that the user does not have. So I call them UserNotRoles, right? So GetUserNotRoles, get the roles that user does not have. GetUserRoles, get the roles of the user. So given a user, given a particular user, we want to get the roles that the user does not have. Now, the roles that the user is not assigned is coming from the roles table, and the roles that the user have is available in the users table under user.getRoles. So what we want to do is we want to get the roles that are in the users table, but we don't want the roles that already is assigned to the user. So basically we are selecting roles from roles where the role is not in the list of roles assigned to the user. So we are going to be doing joining two tables here. We want to use the roles table and the users table as well. So we are going to be doing a join. We're going to be writing an SQL query. So how do we write SQL query in Java? I mean, this is SQL and this is Java. Well, to do this join and write this SQL query, JPA repository provides us a way to extend the repository to do a join to select a data based on our own SQL query. So to do that, we are going to go to the role repository, and I want to write this query in the role repository, okay? And you want to specify at query, and I'm going to write our query in here. We're going to return a set of role. I'm going to call this function GetUserNotRoles. So I'm going to get this from the role repository. I want to get UserNotRoles based on SQL statement, given a user ID. All right, so now we want to write our query here. So let me import this first. Okay. So we want to write our query in here. So this is where we write our query, and so the value of the query is going to be, now if you know how to do select, so it's going to be select. Now what I'm going to do now is to copy and paste, because I don't know if I've made any mistake. And I'm going to copy here and paste. But I'm changing something because we are using list here, but we also can use set. So I actually decided to use set. So this is the SQL query to get UserNotRoles because we are doing a join. So let me just see where ID not in. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we can go back to the service and just complete the function in the service. So I'm going to say return role repository.getUserNotRoles and specify user.get okay? All right, so we are done with part one. So we now want to create the role controller. Unfortunately, I have to stop this video and continue again. So let's continue in the next part.